2023 was a huge year for gaming, and it seems like 2024 is shaping up to be pretty wild as well. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you know me, you know the channel, you know that primarily I cover turn-based strategy RPGs, but that's not my only wheelhouse that I exist in, and it seems like there's going to be a good variety of things coming out in 2024 that I would like to talk about here. So, if you enjoy me, my voice, my presentation, the type of coverage I do, or anything else, a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. I'm trying to grow, and I can't do so without your help. Thank you so much. Per the request of certain members of my community, today we're going to be going through a quick rundown of some of the big games that are coming out in 2024 that I plan to cover, as well as some other titles that I want to either circle back to or continue that I've missed or that just have kind of gone under the radar until now. Some of these are games that I just am personally interested in, some of them are turn-based strategy RPGs, and a lot of them are requests or recommendations by you all in the community, so we have a good variety of things to look at. We're going to go right through here in chronological order as things are going to be released. So let's get started. First off, throughout the remainder of January, we're going to be trying to wrap up some titles that we've already started. Things like Tactics Ogre Reborn, Crimson Tactics, Persona 5 Tactica, things like that I want to try and give their due justice before other things that I want to cover that are a bit more topical and current kind of take over here on the channel. How much of that we're going to be able to get through is a different question entirely, but you can absolutely expect streams of Tactics Ogre, of P5 Tactica, of Crimson Tactics, and videos about them where applicable, probably largely around Tactics Ogre, but we'll see what other stuff gets thrown in there as well. I'll also, of course, be doing just general topic discussion videos about my interests, things like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, all that type of stuff, but those just kind of come up as they come up, so they're not a specific game that we're going to be covering. Moving into February, that's where we see the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth at the end of the month, and is the first major release of the year that I absolutely am going to be covering. A lot of you might not know this, but one of the first games that I played on the channel back when I was exclusively doing Let's Plays was Final Fantasy VII Remake when it launched, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. I think it's phenomenal. I cannot wait for Rebirth. I know a lot of other people can't wait for Rebirth as well. And while I don't know that there's going to be specifically guide content that I can do for it, because that's a pretty saturated space, we're at the very least going to be streaming it, checking it out, having a good time with it, and seeing where the story goes from here. Next up, coming out in March 8th, we're looking at Unicorn Overlord, just a scant, week and a half after Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, so I'm not sure how we're going to handle that unless I'm really able to blitz through Rebirth, which I don't really see happening. And frankly, Unicorn Overlord is going to be the priority, I think, for quite a while on the channel. This should come as no surprise to you all as a kind of successor to the Ogre Battle series that takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of different tactical greats in the genre. It's going to be something that I'm going to be extremely interested in, and that obviously there's an audience for, seeing as how some of my Unicorn Overlord videos are some of the best videos we've ever had on the channel. So we're going to be dedicating a lot of time to that, a lot of streams, a lot of videos, I would imagine, so long as the game isn't terrible, which I'd be surprised if it was. Everything we've seen has looked really, really good. So you can look forward to a lot of that starting in March. In April, we have the release of Eiyuden Chronicle, 100 Heroes on the 23rd of April. And again, as another JRPG, another big title, it's going to take up a lot of time, and I don't know if it's something that I will have as much time for as I would like. Who knows how long Unicorn Overlord is going to stay on the channel, both in terms of streaming content and video content, and if it is continuing to persist in the way that things like Tactics Ogre did for a long time, and still does to a degree, then Eiyuden is probably going to take a back seat. But if there's room for it to fit, another massive JRPG into the schedule, I absolutely want to cover it. I've said many times before that the Suikoden series, specifically Suikoden 1 and 2, are some of my favorite JRPGs of my childhood. I think they have a ton of merit that has gone largely unrecognized in the modern space, and having a spiritual successor from the original creator of the series in Eiyuden should make it a really good time. So long as the game is solid and there's interest in it, I'll probably do some guide videos about recruitment and things like that, party composition, and I definitely want to stream the game for you guys. You can kind of see, hopefully, some of the magic that those classic PS1 era games had for me and a lot of people in our youth. So April is going to be shaping up to be, or at least the end of April, the Eiyuden Chronicle month. May's looking pretty quiet, so hopefully in there we can wrap up some of the ongoing things that we have going on, whether that be Eiyuden Chronicle, more Unicorn Overlord stuff, God forbid still trying to finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and if all of those are somehow out of the way, that's where I'd like to try and fit in some other commonly requested things like Iconoclasts, Control, other titles that people have been wanting to see me play and that I'd like to play that just haven't had really the time to breathe. May isn't going to be the exclusive time for those games. I want to try and just weave them in wherever and whenever possible. It really just depends on how time-consuming some of these other major releases are in the streaming and video schedule. In June 4th, we have Destiny 2: The Final Shape, and I know this might be an odd one to hear me mention, but come good or ill, I want to see how this era of Destiny ends. Those of you who've seen my commentary on Destiny since the release of Lightfall know that I'm extremely down on it currently, and for good reason, because Bungie has really put themselves in a really bad spot with what really should be not an easy title to manage, but a title that has so much potential that just isn't being executed on properly. Lightfall was a disaster. The seasons following it have been from mixed to pretty good from what I've heard. I've not played any of them, but Bungie's floundering financial state, the massive amount of layoffs that they've had, and the increased viciousness with which they've been dealing with things on a business side shows that they're in really dire straits, and it really hammers home that the Final Shape has to be good for them. So, if the Final Shape seems to be shaping up, no pun intended, to be good, then I'll probably play it on stream, see what I and you all in the community think of it, and kind of give our final thoughts on what could very well be the end of Destiny as anyone and everyone knows it. If it goes poorly, then I want to cover that as well, specifically to kind of document what went wrong and try and get a better understanding of how even such a live service giant that for all intents and purposes has been pretty successful compared to a lot of the other attempts that have been made, and things like, you know, Anthem, Redfall, Avengers, etc., 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 and see how even that can go wrong, and kind of just discuss it and give my thoughts. So there's going to be Destiny coverage in June. What that's going to turn into really kind of depends on what the Final Shape winds up being. We'll have to see. After that, we have a bit more openness. There's not nearly as many concrete release dates. There is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 in September, on September 9th, that I'm very, very interested in. I'm a big fan of the original Space Marine, and while my exposure to Warhammer 40k is pretty exclusive to the various video games that they've released, things like Dawn of War, Space Marine, all that type of good stuff, I still consider myself to be a fairly big fan, even if I haven't read many, if any, actually, of the novels or played any of the tabletop. So Space Marine 2 is something I'm extremely excited for, especially with its 3-player co-op campaign. If there's time in the schedule and any sort of interest whatsoever, that's one that I would absolutely like to stream and maybe bring a couple of buddies along for the ride with. I think that'd make for a very good time. It should be a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more easygoing, you know, despite all the blood and guts, not exactly a lot of tactical discussion to be had. So I think it'll be a good palate cleanser. Once we move past Space Marine 2, we kind of enter a dead time in terms of known releases. From October to December, there's not really a whole lot that I'm aware of that's going to be coming out with any sort of concrete release date that I'm particularly interested in or specifically interested in for the sake of the channel and the type of stuff we do here. We could see Elden Ring's DLC come out. We could maybe see new content for Armored Core 6, that type of stuff, which I'll absolutely be covering if and when it releases this year. But other than that, I'm not really sure what's going to be going on. So again, this is the time that we'll be able to revisit things like Control, like Iconoclasts, like Final Fantasy XIV. I've been talking about wanting to finally get back into and put on the channel in terms of streams. I think that'd be a really fun time. There's also smaller indie projects like Together in Battle and Telepath Tactics Liberated, both coming to us courtesy of Sinister Design, a small solo indie dev who seems like he's got a lot of interesting ideas in the turn-based space and was actually gracious enough to send me a couple of keys for his games, though I've not yet had the chance to check them out. I'd like to do so sooner rather than later, but if nothing else, it seems like we should have some good time to do so in 2024. We'll see what winds up happening with that. Finally, other things that I would really like to check out or do more of on the channel. More Fire Emblem. I'd love to revisit some of the older games, finally get them up on the channel, do some content talking about them, stream the actual games, have a good time with those, because I do eventually want to have all the Fire Emblem games on the channel, as well as things like Ogre Battle 64, March of the Black Queen, things that we're obviously going to have some tangential experience with after Unicorn Overlord, and which I would really like to fill out. It's kind of a void in my gaming knowledge, especially given how much I love Tactics Ogre Reborn. So you can expect to see those whenever possible. And if we don't hear anything about Final Fantasy Tactics Reborn, Remastered, whatever it might wind up being, obviously rumors are ping-ponging back and forth on whether it's happening, not happening, then maybe this is where we can finally start to see a proper playthrough and some videos about Final Fantasy Tactics come in. It really depends. Long year ahead of us wherein all sorts of things could happen, but if it doesn't seem like a Tactics Reborn is going to be in the cards anytime soon, we don't hear anything about it by near the end of the year, then maybe that's something we can consider doing as well. Beyond that, I mean, all kind of playing by ear, right? No plan survives first contact with the enemy or survives contact with sudden release dates and schedules and stealth drops of major projects and titles and indie things and all that type of stuff. You all know how it goes. So this is certainly subject to change, but I wanted to talk about a little bit of what my plans are so you guys know what it is that should be coming up on the channel. If there's other stuff that I'm forgetting about, stuff that you would like to see me try to weave in, all that, I would very much appreciate it if you would put it in the comments. My memory is a sieve. I've got so many things going on in my head at any given time between the channel, regular work, working out, cooking, cleaning, houseworky type stuff, etc., on top of the fact that I just have a bad memory to begin with because of that good old chemo brain. So if you can help keep me on task, politely, gently, it'd be very much appreciated. I need all the help I can get in that regard. And we'll see, maybe at the end of 2024, we can compare this video to what actually winds up going down over the course of the year and have a little bit of a laugh about how inaccurate it inevitably winds up being. For now, though, thank you all so much for watching/listening. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.